Yes. So maybe I start slow because it's not quite 3 o'clock. So this session will be on line breaks in T SQL and Friends. So what I want to show you is a quick introduction of what line breaks are, how you get them into T SQL, how you get them out of T SQL, and then I'm going to show you some things you have to watch out for if you're using line breaks, which probably most of you do. So a quick word on me. I'm aged 34. I'm actually working as a software developer with focus on databases, but it's not the only thing that I'm doing. And this is my second largest session. So this one is quite new in some respects for me. So very quick timing and obviously usual audience than I'm used to usually. So let's have a look on what line breaks really are. So I just looked up Wikipedia and it always gives nice definitions. So a new line is a control character or sequence of control characters in a character encoding specification that is used to signify the end of the line of text that starts of a new line. Isn't that a great explanation? It's already way more complicated than most of you probably imagined, right? So let us have a look on how things work. So looking back in time, before computers, there were typewriters. And typewriters used to have a huge lever on the right-hand side, and you would push it to the left if you wanted to go to a new site. So, new line, sorry. So first, you would push the carriage all the way to the left, and then the last bit, when the carriage was all the way to the left, would actually feed one line up. So this was translated for computers into two characters. Character 13 is usually used to encode the carriage return, and character 10 is usually used to encode the line feed. And this is how Windows and previously DOS usually encodes line breaks. So they're always using those two characters. I will refer from now on just with CR and LF on the slides to them. If we're having C-like things like JSON or Java or whatsoever, you're usually having this \r, \n notation, and PowerShell, because probably they have lots of Windows paths in them, they use backticks and not backslash. And well, you have to get used to that. But yeah, you know now why it's two characters, and I don't know still why it's 13 then 10 and not 10 then 13, but they decided that way. And so the guys of Unix said, well, you don't need two characters. New line is just that what we want to have, and they decided to just use the character 10 for introducing new lines. And it's quite common for web because, well, single character is always nice. And then there were some guys, and I have to believe that they were working at Macintosh at that time or at Apple at that time, and they have used carriage return as the single character for introducing new lines. Luckily, it's currently being extinguished because the last system to use this is now, I think, 10 years old or something like 15. And Mac OS X, which is the prevalent Mac system right now, also adopted \n or line feed for breaking lines. So for T SQL, there isn't really a definition on which line feed you should use, but there are certain operations, like for example, bulk insert, that could read CSVs that are also relying on knowing when you're breaking lines. And they usually either rely on having a single line feed or carriage return followed by line feed. Because likely it was developed by Windows developers and they like carriage return line feed. So entering a line feed usually can be done in just putting a line feed in your code and then continuing the string. You don't have to do much. But if you want to know which line break you have, you can also encode this by using the char function to get just the one char that you have. And if you like Unicode strings, you could obviously also use nchar 13 and nchar 10, and they should work just the same. So what is the problem? So now, when I'm having this string containing a line break, and I'm using, for example, for JSON, they get encoded quite well. They're using the C-style representation I showed you earlier with the \r and \n, and they automatically do this for you. If you're using XML, however, you will see that they do encode the carriage return, but they don't encode the new line. It's still present as new line. So what does this mean? Really, it means that certain readers will reject carriage return even if it's encoded, or others may probably normalize your documents later. So this led to a problem with us because sometimes round trips would actually mess up with the line breaks. Just imagine you would sign some function and you would actually be relying on a byte-wise encoding to be correct. This would be trouble if somebody is just normalizing your line breaks into simple line feed line breaks, but you're expecting carriage return line feed. So then there is one more thing to watch out. So I'm a bit automating our builds, and somebody thought it to be a good idea to have a comment that ended a line with a backslash, and it just got lost. The backslash and the line break. And so I found out there is line continuation. So while I was aware that you need to escape single quotes by doubling them, you can also try to nice up your strings, it seems, by putting a backslash in front of a line break. And then if you read in that string, it will just be gone. Like you see, I'm doing this, or I'm having an exec statement, so the parser gets the chance to parse my prepared line breaks. Here is one with carriage return line feed, here's one with just line feed, and here's one with just carriage return. And the JSON returned does only include a single line breaking character, and this is actually the carriage return. No backslash at all, and the other two line breaks totally gone. And if you're, again, relying on something being exactly the same as you've seen it somewhere else, this can be a huge trouble to you. So how can we get rid of this? Looking in the documentation, I'm not sure that that is easy to find because, well, who would be looking for line continuation? Then you don't see any escapes. But you can basically do a variation of the repeating. So what we are basically doing is we're looking for a line continuation with line feed, and we're replacing it with 2 backslashes and 2 line feeds. So the SQL Server will eat up the middle part, leaving our backslash and our line feed outside in place because only the middle part got eaten up. We could do the very same thing for backslash carriage return line feed, but I also will just introduce a single line feed and not a carriage return line feed. It doesn't really matter because it will be eaten up too. And third, I will replace the backslash carriage return by 2 backslashes and the carriage return. The last one isn't mentioned anywhere in the documentation as far as I'm aware, but still it works just like that. And if you execute this, you will actually get the output that you expected before, and nothing of the things that we wanted to have is left out. So next caveat is that by default, SQL Management Studio will discard your line breaks if you're trying to copy from grid results. And this is again something that bothered me for some time. I mean, okay, obviously you set up SQL Management Studio once and maybe you forget about that, but then you get a new machine and then it happens again. And so you have to actually look at 2 settings. There is one setting where you can change this behavior for the single currently active query. So you're heading over to the query menu that only ever is scoped to the single query you're currently having open. And you have an option retain CRLF on copy or save. And you have a second option for all the queries that you will be running later. And it's named the same, but it is hooked up under tools, options, and there's a lot more to select on the left-hand side. And yeah, it's totally great. You have to think of both places if you want to be sure that if you ever have a line break, you can copy it from grid. Nice. So next thing, then we're having Azure Data Studio now. So does this behave the same? It did get a bit better. So there is a single setting, and it's when you're going to settings, I think it's file and then settings. You can navigate to data, query editor, scroll a bit down, and then you have results, copy, remove, new line. I think it should read remove new line on copy, but well, I think they named it this quirky way, so you will find it like that. And you can uncheck this box. By default, it's checked. The blue mark here means I already changed this because I like new lines, at least most of the times. Nice thing here is you have only this one setting and it will take immediately effect even for already open result grids. You don't have to do anything more. And if you like to edit JSON files, I already put the name of the setting on top. So last thing I want to point out is that if you're on transport with text files, many systems, especially older systems, have their own ways of dealing with line breaks. So Git, for example, tries to always store just line feed as line breaks, but offers a setting where how line breaks are expanded, so to say, when you check out things locally. And it could be line feed, carriage return line feed, or native, which is the default and is carriage return line feed on Windows and line feed on pretty much everything else. There are some more options related to that, especially to what is considered a text file, but I think it's not coverable in these 10 minutes. So probably look up the documentation. That's a starting point, and go on from there. And probably for some of you, you might remember FTP having two transport modes, one being binary and one being text. This was also trying to convert the line breaks to the target system. And sometimes it really messed up badly with binary files that didn't have anything to do with text. So in effect, it is just like many things. Most people think line breaks just work, are a simple thing to do, and you don't have to take care of anything around line breaks. Just put them in the string and they work like magic. But the reality is, again, much more complicated. And if you're having these edge cases, probably also developing build automation or something like that, you probably should take 1 or 2 seconds to think about that. You probably have seen here is the GitHub location where I already placed the presentation. There's also the SQL snippets in a separate file. And in the end, I just can say, please contact me if you're having any feedback to this. I'm usually found on Twitter, also under The Constructor as Nick, and I'm happy to answer you if I can.